All right, welcome back. The Outsider Sports Football Podcast here on Wednesday, April 24th, 2024 with Dylan Mel and Corey Jason. I'm Ryan Balliot, and guys, we're recording at 8 p.m. I just got the tweet from Ari Meirov. We're 24 hours away from the NFL draft. So today's episode is going to be all about those final thoughts heading into round one, opening night, some bold predictions, and let's get right into it, guys, because I worked tirelessly today on a skeleton of pretty much a skeleton mock draft, the swerve of the century. So Caleb Williams will be a Bear, Jane Daniels will be a Commander. Everyone's thinking Drake May at 3. No, Patriots are going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. They're going to take the top generational wide receiver prospect, and that's going to create just heads are going to be everywhere. Calling Arizona, looking to move up to 4. We thought it was going to be for McCarthy, and then it's going to be for Drake May. Everyone's eyeing up Minnesota as the team to trade up with those 2 first-round picks at 11 and 23. It's going to be Denver. Moving up from 12, a first-rounder next year, and Pat Surtain, one of the top corners in the game. He'll be an Arizona Cardinal. And Sean Payton gets Drake May to be his quarterback. It's not going to be Zach Wilson. I know they just got him. Broncos fans can breathe. Not a sigh of relief, just breathe in general.
Let's ride.
Let's continue that ride, man. So Drake May goes at 4. Then it'll please Corey to hear the Giants will walk away with Malik Neighbors at 6 because the Chargers stay at 5 and take Joe Alt. Jim Harbaugh, I think, has a very specific vision for what he wants the Chargers to be. That's going to start by continuing to build that line. And let's give Quentin Johnston another year, right? The Chargers at least have an early second-round pick. They can go grab a receiver at the top of the second round. Tennessee sitting there at 7 then. They wanted Joe Alt. I don't think that's a secret. They don't get him. They figure, all right, well, let's move back a couple picks. To me, it's Alt is the clear number 1 tackle. Then it's the rest of them in a big kind of circle. So they'll move back a couple picks. Arizona last year, remember, they traded down from 3. Then they traded back up for Paris Johnson, a tackle. They're going to do the same thing this year, trading back up with Tennessee to 7 from 12 to take Rome Odunze. Everyone was saying Marvin Harrison to the Cardinals at 4. They get Rome, still a very good option, another weapon for Kyler Murray. Minnesota, meanwhile, all this chaos going on, they're just going to stick at 11. They still get J.J. McCarthy, so that's besides New England taking Marvin at 3 instead of a quarterback. This is the other half of my bold prediction. Minnesota, with all that capital, will not trade up. They'll stick at 11. They'll still get McCarthy because some of these other teams know what we all know, and that's McCarthy's not that good. But a mistake will still be made here in round 1. Tennessee will get their pick of the tackles still at 12, whether that's Fuaga or Fashanu, J.C. Latham, whoever it is. But then coming back full circle, New England didn't take their quarterback at the top. They're going to trade back into round 1 from 34 overall with Arizona. Arizona will trade back again to take Michael Penix at the back end of round 1. So they'll still get a quarterback. They'll have him on the 5th-year option to throw to Marvin Harrison instead of having Drake May throwing to whoever, Demario Douglas. So that's my skeleton here. I'll only take a victory lap if every single one of those things happen. If I miss one, I'll have my head hung in shame next week. What do you guys think of that?
I think you're certifiably insane.
The scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia comes to mind where the guy's got the boards. I feel like that was you today.
This is his Pepe Sylvia.
If that's not draft day in a nutshell, I don't know what is.
Well, I do think we're on the verge of the most unpredictable drafts in a long, long time.
You think that's because it's such a mid-draft? Like, there's nobody that really, like...
I think it is because it is a one-sided draft in terms of it is a very offense-heavy. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw 6 quarterbacks, 6 O tackles, 6 wide receivers, all go in the first round. You know, I wouldn't be shocked if the first 10 picks of the draft were all offense. You know,
I bet over 20
Falcons,
and a half offensive players taken in the first round.
Yeah, it just would not surprise me. So with that being said, I do think there's a lot of movement to be had there as well. 6 starting level quarterbacks. is a lot. We could say that Bo Nix and Michael Penix aren't great, but in most drafts, those would be like the third quarterback off the board. And, they're 5 and 6 here. So I think Ryan's definitely not alone in the standpoint of a lot could go down. And for him, just a lot did. Personally, I don't see it quite going that way. I actually think it's going to be the opposite and perhaps be a little anticlimactic and maybe let some people down. But I do think the first 4 picks are going to be quarterbacks. So I do think we see Caleb 1. I think that's, I think the draft starts at 2.
Yeah.
I'm also on the Jaden Daniels to Commanders train. They bring in Cliff Kingsbury. Mariota's the backup. It seems like the system that they're building is for a mobile quarterback. Drake May can run, but not to the level of Jaden Daniels. At 3, I think the Patriots should and will trade back. I think Minnesota went and got those picks for a reason. They trade up. Everybody's saying that they want McCarthy. I think they want Drake May. Josh McCown, their quarterback coach, was actually Drake May's high school quarterback coach. There's a connection there. I think he's got a huge arm. Weapons like Jefferson, Addison. They're going to want a guy in there. And I think him and Sam Darnold are similar enough that, again, the backup matches the starter. At 4, this is where Corey's going to hate me. I think the team that makes the most sense to trade with the Cardinals is the New York Giants, because the Cardinals do still want a top-tier wide receiver, and going to 6, for an additional third rounder, you don't lose one of the top 2 wide receivers. And the vibes I'm getting out of New York is that they're done with Daniel Jones. And then that's the team that ends up with McCarthy. At 5, I think the Chargers fans who are screaming for Marvin Harrison Jr. don't get their wish. And Joe Alt is a Charger. The Cardinals trade back and still get Marvin Harrison Jr. And then I think the Bears are a prime trade back team at 9. For a team to come up and get a Penix or Bo Nix, whichever quarterback they believe in. If the Raiders or Broncos want to for sure get their guy, I think the Jets are going to mistakenly take Brock Bowers in the first round. And I say mistakenly, he's going to be a great tight end. If it was me, I wouldn't put all my eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket, but it seems like that might be too little too late for New York. I also think that my own Eagles are a team that's going to trade up in this draft. I don't know who Howie loves, but there's a ton of great secondary players with, Quayon, DeJean, Terry Arnold. I think Howie wants to get his guy, trades up from one of them. I also think Buffalo trading up as the draft falls that way for a potential Rome Odunze's in play. But I think we see a lot of action at the top, and then things kind of settle out. As well, a Brandon Ayuk trade's happening. I mean, that's just how I feel. Brandon Ayuk will be a Pittsburgh Steeler by the end of at least Friday.
Yeah, he's got to be with his twin.
Yeah, Corey, as a Giants fan, before in the pre-show, I said that I had an interesting take on the Giants, and you said, well, I just hope it's not like Ben's where we take Joe Alt. Now that you've heard my take, would you prefer to take Joe Alt?
So I'd almost rather nuclear war break out before either of these 2 options happen.
Let's talk nightmare scenarios.
This is I'd rather a nightmare scenario than Joe Alt or JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy, I don't hate as a player. I just hate the idea of him as a Giant. I don't think he's that good. I think he's a winner. He's successful. I think he's somebody that has to go to the perfect situation. And I've already gone through 5 years of that, of a quarterback that needs to be in the perfect situation to succeed. McCarthy's got to go somewhere like Minnesota to be good.
Yeah, I saw a mock today where that was flipped, where McCarthy went 3 and then Drake May, the Giants traded up for at 4.
I would much rather that, but I think the Giants trading up regardless is a nightmare scenario because they have way too many holes. The roster is devoid of talent for the most part, especially in skill positions. The Giants need to be trading back, not up.
What if you guys trade up for Marvin?
No, back. Trade back.
No, but
Well,
if you traded
Yeah,
up
Marvin.
to 4 for Marvin,
I
is
mean-
that also nightmare, or is that, well, we got the best wide receiver in the draft?
I don't think he's the best wide receiver in the draft. Like, I'd be
That's a
very
bold take.
confused at that. I said it a couple weeks ago too. I don't think he's going to end up as the best. I think Odunze and Neighbors might end up better than him.
Huh?
Not to say he's not good. He will be very, very
Oh yeah,
good.
yeah.
I just think that I like what those two and their ceiling over Harrison's, higher floor, if that makes any sense.
No, I get it. I'm on the side of Odunze over Neighbors, which is very unpopular at this point in time. But I think
don't
he's
hate that.
the true X, and I don't think
Yes.
Neighbors is.
I would be thrilled with Neighbors or Odunze. To me, they would be like the 1A, 1B options at 6 because I would be thrilled with either. I think Odunze's got a better chance to fall, especially in a trade back scenario. I think Neighbors gets snapped up pretty quick just because of LSU's a wide receiver factory. He's more electric.
And
But
he's the fastest of the top 3.
Yes,
And speed has become
Yeah.
very prominent.
it has. So for me, my hot take is that we don't see a trade in the top 5. The top 5 teams take the top 5 players. Williams, Daniels, May go 1, 2, 3. Harrison 4. Now the Chargers, I'm kind of stuck. I don't think Joe Alt's going to be. Joe Alt might not be the first tackle off the board. They could go Olu Fashanu. Right now, I have Joe Alt going 5 to the Chargers, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were some surprise moves out there because it's a very deep tackle class.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
the Chargers go Fashanu at 5. That would leave Joe Alt for you guys at 6.
It would, but then Joe Shane would lose access to the building.
yeah.
Ball Adams.
The Chargers are such an interesting one to me because for me going into the pre-draft process when everything first shook out blindly before we started hearing any rumors, I thought that's a team to trade back. The roster was ripped. Somebody's going to want to move up to 5. You could get a haul. And I still feel like that's the best move, but I have not heard any smoke around the Chargers trading back, which
The
leads me to
opposite,
believe
really.
they're going to stay. Like, you've heard the opposite. I mean, that just shows to what you listen to, but I've been in the weeds, and everybody's just been like,
I'm
Joe
saying
Alt, Joe Alt.
I've heard the opposite. They're not trading back. Like
Oh, yeah.
opposite of what you thought you would have assumed.
I just think it's
gonna
still
stay.
a good idea. Like, if the draft goes the way that you just laid out, there's going to be a team chomping to trade up for JJ McCarthy. Whether it's Minnesota, the
Yeah.
Raiders, Denver, it's like hilarious that 2 of those 3 teams are in their division. They could capsize a team that's in their division by letting them trade up for JJ McCarthy and get additional value back. I mean, talk about a dunk.
which is why I think we're more likely to see Joe Alt go 5 and then the Giants get a bidding war for the 6th pick between the Broncos, Vikings, and Raiders. No teams, that are connected to the Giants division,
Mhm.
conference, they're all away. Well, Vikings are in the NFC North, but they're so far removed. The Giants aren't going to have to worry about them. Giants could get a haul.
Yeah.
That would be my dream scenario. The trade up with the Broncos for 12, next year's 1 in Sertan. That puts the Giants right back on track.
I don't like that.
I know you don't, because it's a smart move, and only Howie can do smart moves in the division.
Yeah, so I guess that means it won't happen.
No, it won't happen. But I think the Giants then would either come away with Odunze or Neighbors. And then as you kind of get out to the rest of the top 10, I think the Titans take the top offensive lineman available. I think the Falcons taking Dallas Turner, to me, is a lock.
Do we
That's like
think
the most direct pick, I think, other than Caleb, but
I want to talk about the Titans for a second before we just move past them. Because if Alt goes at 5, say there's the bidding war for the quarterback at 6. Whoever moves up, it doesn't matter. But a quarterback's taken. Malik Neighbors is still on the board. it has to cross Tennessee's mind to take him because from what everybody's heard, Joe Alt is their guy. That's who. If he's on the board, the card is handed in 5 seconds. If not, you're looking at Neighbors, Fuaga, Fashanu. Is there a conversation in Tennessee? Because they clearly want to know what they have in Levis this year with Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard. If you just add Malik Neighbors to that, you'll know by Thanksgiving if this guy is the guy or not.
I think there'll be a conversation. I think they still end up deciding on offensive linemen because, again, you got a couple of really great receivers. A third would be great, but also protecting Levis because
Hopkins' contract also ends after this year. He's not getting younger.
But you end up in the Giants boat of how can you evaluate a guy with a terrible offensive line?
I do think that also, devil's advocate to my point. The Titans have a high pick in the second round as well.
Right, and I think Neighbors wouldn't be there. I think he would.
No, Neighbors wouldn't be, but a Xavier Legette, Xavier Worthy, just another skill player.
Second round though for that.
Yeah.
Although one of my bold takes is Legette's a first-round wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I was just throwing out a name. Could be a Keon Coleman, whoever. Like, the wide receiver class is very deep, which is why I also think teams may be hesitant to move up for them, and we could see a Neighbors or a Dunze fall down the board.
Absolutely. And then Chicago, though, at 9, it's a tough one. If they do stay at 9, I think they're going to go Byron Murphy. I already have that bet locked in. I think that's a very realistic possibility if he goes 9 to the Bears.
Yeah, I think Murphy would fit with Flus's system.
Yeah.
Defensively, for sure.
I have no idea why at 9, if they stay, people are just penciling in Odunze as if the head coach of the team is not a defensive-minded guy. Because in free agency, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, Gerald Everett, the team spent on offense already. Eberflus is a defensive guy. It would be shocking to me if they picked at 9 and it was an offensive player. Period. And that seems to be where every mock has them going. I think that could be a real surprise to some people's draft boards.
Yeah, even defensively, they retained Jalen Johnson too in the secondary, so I think you could rule out Mitchell or Arnold or one of those corners.
It seems like Eberflus is a big defensive line guy.
Yeah.
So, I think your Jared Verse, your Byron Murphy, your Latu Latu, I think those guys are all in play.
Yeah, it comes down
even Johnny Newton out of Illinois. I mean, Chicago Bears, Illinois kid.
I've seen him fall out of the first. I've seen him fall a lot, actually. Because he's got a lot of injury issues. I've seen him fall out of the first round.
They're interesting.
There's going to be so few of them taken.
Yeah, what did you say the over-under was? 20 on offense?
20 and a half when I saw it.
I think it'll be more than that. Dylan said, we could.
I think there's a lot of corners that get taken. I think that's one of the things. A lot of corners.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I don't know if you guys saw if the Colts or Eagles put it out. The Giants, I believe, said they gave 14 players a first-round grade this year. And that just goes to show how teams attack the draft, where, you assume 32 teams, 32 first-round players, right? No, there's a lot less than that.
Yeah.
So, if you're picking in the back half of the first round, if you're a good team, you're not getting a first-round player, quote-unquote. You're getting one of your high seconds, mid-second round grade players that you have. And that's kind of crazy to think about.
Do we think that any of the 6 quarterbacks fall past Vegas at 13?
Yes. I think there's only going to be 4 quarterbacks taken in the first round.
I have 5.
So I had 6 taken in my mock draft. I had Knicks taken at 12 to Denver because I think Sean Payton believes he can turn him into Drew Brees. I don't think he's correct, but I think he believes he can. And then I had Penix fall. In my mock, I had New England trade out of 3, if you remember. I then had Penix available at 28, 29, wherever Detroit picks. And I had New England trade back in and select Penix there. That way they can get the 5th-year option. If Penix or Knicks, somebody starts to fall in the draft, keep an eye on a late trade for that to happen. because teams will want that additional year option
Yeah.
on the quarterback.
Yeah, I see
think-
this class as similar
Yeah.
not only to 21, but also 18. Remember, those both had 5 quarterbacks going. I mean, even last year, we sat here a year ago and said, yeah, it's going to be Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. Someone's going to trade up with Arizona, take a quarterback, and Indy will get whatever's left. It'll be 4 in a row. And that didn't happen. Remember, Will Levis just
fell.
even Tennessee passed on him in the first round. They took him in the second round. So
He was
I-
like plus 250 on draft day to be the second pick too.
yeah, something like that I think will happen. We'll have the obvious ones. Caleb Williams. I think we all share the same thinking here. Jaden Daniels will go to Washington. Then it'll be Drake May will be a pick right at the top, whether it's at 3, 4, 5, 6. He's not going any further than that. I think McCarthy will fall. I don't think there will be a bidding
He
war.
wouldn't fall past 6, and I think you're right about that.
Yeah,
Hey,
And I love McCarthy, so I would. It's tough because
you love him. I had
I
him
do.
going to the Giants. Perfect.
When I say McCarthy, I meant May.
you did say McCarthy.
You did.
Yeah,
say
They won't last past 6. McCarthy
my
will
math
have a
out.
bidding
Go
war we're
Bucks.
expecting.
We're gonna clip that, and when my scenario comes true, Corey Jason loves McCarthy.
He's been a day one truther. But then, yeah,
I love
you know,
May. I think May's got a chance to fall to 6.
it's a non-zero chance. It's not great.
A lot of mocks have him falling recently. I mean, it's smokescreen season.
Yeah.
But I think there is a legitimate chance May could fall. McCarthy, I think, could fall to Minnesota at 12,
At 11.
at 11, and them not having to move. I think that's very possible.
Yeah, I think
I-
Penix will be like Dylan said. He'll be the one like that Lamar Jackson, the one that falls and someone comes up
Yeah.
and gets them.
I think Knicks will go before Penix.
The way that we're talking about this too, we could be in a world where Ryan's Colts, I know you didn't want a corner, but you'd have your pick. I also think if it falls that way, Howie Roseman's trading up to 14 and taking his pick right in front of you.
Who's his pick?
I don't know.
Howie
So-
Roseman could take a punter and he'd become like the greatest punter of all time.
So
I just don't understand it.
Quayon Mitchell, his NFL comp is Darius Slay. So my assumption is that is Howie's pick.
That's who I have going to the Colts.
Let me talk
But
about
so
my
if the Eagles skip the Colts and go to 14 with New
They would
Orleans,
take-
because now New Orleans with the Ramczyk injury, they need defensive line, they need corners. They could use an additional pick in this year's draft. And Howie is no stranger to moving up. I don't know what picks the Eagles own exactly. I could look it up, but if they own like 2/3, I could easily see a move being made to jump up to 14, and then they get their corner 1.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, even if the Saints just stay and pick a tackle there,
Yeah, for sure.
Ballard loves to trade down. You could easily trade up 7 spots with us, and I would hate every second of it.
No colluding here. Colts and Eagles and their back alley deals.
Like,
So
listen,
the
we have a
Eagles
long-
have 2 second-round picks, no third-round picks, but the Eagles have 3 fifth-round picks. I promise you, one of those fifth-round picks will be involved in a deal for Howie to move up.
So there you go. You move up in round 1. You take one of those second rounders and move it down to round 3, like
Yeah.
with the Saints, and then you give them a 5th. That gets you up 7, 8.
That gets you up 8 picks, and then you could take whoever's number 1 on your board. Because
Yeah.
like you said earlier, Corey, the Giants have 14 first-round talents. I'd imagine the Eagles are somewhere around there. And in terms of defensive backs, corners, I bet there's 1, maybe 2.
Yeah. And if you have the opportunity to go up and get one of them, you kind of should.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Daniel Jeremiah threw out that he said, don't be surprised if Indy trades up further for Mitchell. And I've seen a lot, Chicago at 9. That would make a lot of sense if that's who Indy wants. But I want to circle back to Corey's dilemma of Alt or McCarthy. Dylan, what's your nightmare scenario? And then I'll share mine.
For the
What
Eagles,
you absolutely
Who doesn't
don't
get
want
one?
Indy
They-
to go in round 1.
Eagles have possibly the best GM in football. There is no nightmare scenario for them because they know that it'll work out.
there's no nightmare scenario for me. because at this point, like I have enough trust, and we don't need a wide receiver, so Howie won't mess that up. But I guess what would be least exciting to me is if we took an interior defensive lineman. Like if Johnny Newton fell to us and that was the pick, I would kind of scratch my head and be like, well, we have Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Like,
Yeah.
is that really where we need to go? But like, it's also the nightmare scenario that I'm like, yeah, the Eagles like a defensive line rotation. Like, I could easily see them if they think he's like a good talent going there. But even if we went with a Latu Latu, a Jared Verse, or a Chop Robinson, yeah, I would have faith in the team to develop the player. I've grown more on the offensive line pick as well. Originally, if you'd asked me this a couple weeks ago, I'd have been like, I just don't want to see another O lineman. But Lane's getting older, Kelsey. It would depend on the O lineman. I'm not a huge Graham Barton guy out of Duke, so I wouldn't really like that name read. But as you guys know, I'm an Oregon fan. If we took Jackson Powers Johnson, play center as well, snipe
I
the
have him
pick
go to
that Dallas,
start this
snipe the pick that Dallas is going to take 2
Would
picks
that be your
later.
dream scenario? Or you
No,
want to
dream
trade up
dream
for a
scenario is for sure the trade up for either DeJean or Quayon.
year.
See, it's
I
funny.
got a
My nightmare scenario
for
is
Philly.
trading down for DeJean.
I got a nightmare scenario for Philly. Philly's on the clock, and it just ticks and ticks and ticks, and Howie forgets to submit a pick.
Uh-oh.
I guess I would say the nightmare scenario for me is trading back out of the first round. It's not a nightmare, but it would be like, well, I just watched the draft production for 2.5 hours and my team traded out of the first round. Like
It
at
must
least
be
like
nice
the
to be in that
Texans,
position.
like the Texans who had the 23rd pick. At least like they know going in, oh, we already traded that. Like I would hate to trade back after watching it. I don't know why you're down on DeJean though.
Part of it is the problem with our secondary is that it's young and inexperienced. And I don't think adding another one in the first round is going to help that. I think us not acquiring Snead was a huge misstep.
Yeah.
I think we needed a more veteran presence. So maybe if I don't know who else on the corner market we could trade for that could capitalize on that. I would have said Justin Simmons, but we re-signed Julian Blackman at safety. I just think Alec Pierce isn't really it. To me, it has to be a receiver. And Brian Thomas Jr. has the size, the speed, the athleticism that I know the Colts like, that RAS score. To me, that's the pick. If we walk away with Mitchell or Arnold, I won't be mad, but I don't think DeJean's as good. And it seems like a cop-out. I feel like he's a better safety, and we absolutely don't need another safety. Whereas you guys could benefit from that versatility.
Yeah, for sure. And I you'll know this very well. I think the Eagles have stock in Isaiah Rodgers. I think a lot of people forgot about that trade. Just reinstated. The last year that he played, he was top 10 in PFF stats in terms of coverage. Like, I think he's going to be a very good player, and I do think that they believe in him. I still think that internally they believe in Bradbury as well. You've kind of lost me after last season, but I think inside the building there's confidence in him. So I do think a guy like DeJean, who you could just plug in any of those 3 spots, is definitely better for Philly. You talked about the Colts trading back. If you traded back and Brian Thomas is no longer available, but you left with Adonai Mitchell, would you feel good as well? Or is like it Thomas, or I want to go this positional group?
I still would want a receiver. Mitchell probably would be my 5th one on the board because I've also seen Xavier Worthy, and I don't want John Ross 2.0.
I don't think he goes in the first round. I think like if he were to, it would be pick 32, Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah,
and then he'd be a superstar.
Would be the only 2 spots for Worthy.
Yeah.
What if the Colts traded with the Bills and the Bills took Thomas?
That would actually maybe be my nightmare scenario.
Does it depend on what happens for you at Buffalo's pick, or is it just if you see that's it? It's already nightmare.
If they trade up with us and take Brian Thomas Jr., I think I will probably
and even if you end up with Adonai.
Yes.
I don't think Adonai. I don't think he gets picked in the first. I think he slips. I can see him slipping into the third round.
Yeah, you
Third.
were in the pre-show.
Injury
Third
and
round.
concern. I mean, there's been a lot of concern about his injury in history. That a lot of teams have taken him off their draft boards completely because he's got a lot of issues.
I would be shocked if he slipped into the third round. Third,
I-
I mean, second I could buy, but I don't. I think if he was on the board when Detroit picked, they would not trade their pick. I think he would be a Lion.
Corey said that to me before we hit the record button. I said that reminds me a lot of the DK Metcalf in 2019. That was someone I said look at Detroit at like pick 8 or 9, whatever they had, because the problems with Metcalf were coachable. You could just coach. I mean, it's turned out great for Seattle. They took him with the last pick of the second round. Now Mitchell's question marks are different than Metcalf's, but I mean that sort of fall very similar. I think if he
could go
I could have
second
round one.
round.
I mean, you
But,
better
like-
hope he gets picked for the over 20 and a half offensive players.
No, because I think Legette's going to go
Be
first
another
round.
receiver, yeah. Or
I think
McCollum.
Legette's going to be KC's pick at 32.
I had them taking Lad McConkey because no matter what
Getting-
happens with
getting
Rashi
in here?
Rice, no, I think Lad's a good player. I also think that he's a much more slot wide receiver, which is what Kansas City needs because obviously we don't know where things stand on Rashi Rice, but in a perfect world, and in a realistic world, I think he plays this season. Nobody got injured. As sad as this to say, like these things are judged based on results, not action. So since everybody was fine, like it'll probably be 4-game suspension, and then he'll be back. And in KC's ideal world, Hollywood's on the outside, Rashi Rice on the other side, Kelsey, and then Lad in the slot. You know what I
But
mean?
that's
The
something
guy
that
that
they-
they're drafting would be in the slot.
Yeah, they could. That's a good trade back spot then for them because like Lad'll be there in the second round. They can
Yeah.
trade back a few picks and let somebody get that 50 year because I don't think you need that 50.
I mean,
round
if you let Philly pick, we know they love Georgia. I've seen talks of them going up and getting Brock Bowers. I'm like, this is purely like Georgia based, like
Yeah, that's
pushing.
just
That's
Silly with Dallas Goedert.
that is Ben's nightmares.
yeah.
Or-
It's more Georgia players going to Philly.
I mean, Bowers going to the Jets and Ben having to see him in the same stadium as the Giants. That's got to be up there with that.
Yeah, and for anybody wondering what Ben's bold take was, it is that Drake May ends up being better than Caleb Williams.
I will say
I can't defend it. I don't know what his standpoint is. I guess it's just like in terms of like pure build, you would rather build Drake May than Caleb Williams because of like the size. But
I can see that, but also there's also we don't know where Drake May is going to go. Is it Denver? Is it New England? Washington?
he's praying it's
Denver.
Minnesota.
What are the two best falling spots for Drake May?
Minnesota is for sure the top of the. I mean, you get to play with arguably the best wide receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. You have young Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson will be back. Aaron Jones is your running back. You have Kevin O'Connell as your head coach, and your quarterback's coach is Josh McCown, who coached you in high school. Drake May is saying a prayer tonight before he goes to bed that he is a Minnesota Viking tomorrow, because the alternative is a Washington Commander or a New England Patriot or the Giants trade up for him. And that means that they didn't take a wide receiver. So he's throwing to the same piss poor group that Daniel Jones and DeVito did.
Jalen Hyatt still exists.
Yeah, he's like a 3 on a good team.
You know what? We're not a good team, so
Well, you asked Drake May's dream scenario.
that's the top
his.
2 landing spots for him to succeed.
Well, yeah,
I
to
think the
succeed.
Giants would be. Let me circle back real quick to Ben's because Caleb Williams finishing not as great as Drake May, I think could make sense from the perspective of we know he's going to be a Chicago Bear and they have the worst track record in developing quarterbacks of all time. Like if Caleb Williams throws for 4,000 yards in a season, he's already the best quarterback in Bears history. No one else.
I think that the Bears are the dream landing spot for a quarterback, though. Like I
Yeah.
disagree.
They've built it very well, but it's like I need to see it. Like,
Like Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift, Komet Everett, and another top 10 pick.
yeah,
Like that's where I don't
Bears
want
are
to
dirty.
good to be true.
I guess Drake May's like other prime landing spot would. I mean, it depends. You value the coach or the weapons more? Because if you
That's why
value
I
the coach,
like
it's Denver. Well, if you value the coach, it's Denver. I think for him with Sean Payton. But
think the
if you
Bears could
value
get a
weapons, the
trade
Raiders,
for a coach.
the Bears,
I mean, I don't think Eberflus is that good of a coach.
they do.
I
I
think
mean,
he's a lame
I
duck
would-
coach. I think he'll coach this year and then get fired next year.
That's what I think.
I don't
and,
think
like,
so. I think he's fine.
I don't know. I feel like they might trade for an offensive-minded head coach when this doesn't work out.
I think he is a fine player. The hilarious scenario of all of this is Eberflus gets fired. The Commanders are so good. Cliff Kingsbury immediately leaves and then goes back to coaching Caleb Williams, but now in the NFL.
That would be hilarious.
And then the Bears and Washington both fall apart because it doesn't work out.
I mean, yeah, that's
It's a tale
the
of two
comedy. I'm a big Caleb guy, so I'm actually rooting on them to have some level of success.
Did you see the comparison that he's like if Prince was a quarterback?
No, I didn't.
I saw that circulating online today. I don't really get it, but
I
I
think
think
it's because he paints his nails.
It's just such a pointless comparison.
Will Caleb Williams steal Trevor Lawrence's title as the prince that was promised?
No,
Trevor's going to be good.
Caleb Williams didn't really have much college success.
Yeah.
Let's
Are
not
the
forget that
Jags drafting a wide receiver or a corner?
They could go a lot of different ways. I don't think they need a receiver as much as people think they do, but it's
Neither.
certainly in play.
Do we believe
J.C.
there's...
Latham is a Jaguar.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags, for me, any pick could be a good one as long as it's the right player.
Yeah.
Do the LSU Bengals trade up and take Brian Thomas? Because
Would it
T.
make
Higgins
sense to
T.
move on
Higgins
from
is gone after this year.
Yeah, that would make sense, but that's another scenario where it's like go with a more pressing need because you're going to have other really good prospects there.
We know
Sure,
their
if you want
thought
to
process on this already. Pressing need or fun toy. They pick
Fun
fun
toy.
toy. And since they were validated in that selection, they will make it again. And that's why the Jets are going to make it.
The Jets makes a little more sense because right now
Rodgers' timeline is like so small.
you're going to have to make sure that the next quarterback's a little better off. And obviously, building an offensive line fits that bill as well. But I mean, you have Garrett Wilson, and yeah, you brought in Mike Williams, but he's on a 1-year deal and he hasn't played a full season. And I don't remember how long, if he ever has. So you don't really have anything else for the future. So Brock Bowers or a Romo Dunze makes a lot of sense to me still for the Jets. I would just go with the offensive line, help Rodgers out this year and the next guy.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a nightmare scenario for me, but the NFL Network just tweeted this out. Daniel Jeremiah had a first projected mock trade of his mock draft. He has the Eagles trading up with Denver to pick 12. The Eagles get pick 12. Denver gets 22, a second rounder, and a fifth rounder. And the Eagles draft Talise Fuaga, offensive lineman, who could. I like Fuaga because he could be played anywhere, but trading all that draft capital for an offensive lineman in a very like offensive line heavy draft, I'm kind of like. But that's one of those things again where if he's one of few offensive linemen they grade as a first round guy, it'll happen.
And that versatility too, that plays a big part in that because I don't know.
Philly would love it.
You can always talk about, oh, we can move this college tackle inside the guard, but that doesn't always work out still. So if you know, like Fuaga, I think will succeed. You could put him pretty much at any of the 5 spots.
Yeah, I will never be mad at the Eagles for selecting an offensive lineman in the first round just because of how good they are at it. But it's an anticlimactic thing for sure because you watch your team trade up to 12 and then like I've been doing all this research on corners and then like Talise Fuaga and I'm like it's not bad. It's not
the
the exciting pick, but to be fair,
Sometimes it's the
they
right-
already had the exciting move this offseason of signing Saquon. So they
Gotta
could,
get him a line to run behind.
yeah.
Like you said,
Because,
Kelsey retires, Lane's getting older. It does make sense.
yeah.
Only Saquon had functioning legs.
Oh, here we go.
I can't wait to watch Saquon's first game against the Giants.
Albert Hainsworth.
Does
Just saying.
Saquon break 200 all-purpose yards in his first game against the Giants?
I don't know if he'll break 200 all-purpose yards on the season.
Here we go.
Oh my goodness.
I am
Oh,
the
how-
biggest
how-
Saquon
how-
favorite today.
How quickly Giants fans flip.
Oh, of course. You did like the worst possible thing.
Well,
Worse than
to be
51
fair,
pounds.
your team didn't even make an offer.
You didn't deserve one.
No. You can't play both sides of the coin here of
Oh, I will.
how dare he? Well,
He should have went to the Texans, win a Super Bowl
All right,
there.
let's not
Would've
get
been
out
rough.
of hand here. Let's wrap this up before things get too ugly.
Zeke's going back to the Cowboys, reports look like.
We're gonna call
Good, I
this
like that.
as it is.
Me
Thank
too.
you, outsiders, for sticking around on all of our tangents here. Enjoy round one. Oh, brother. Join us next week when we break down and react to not just round one, but all rounds of the NFL draft and start giving our reactions to where these teams stand heading into 2024 and our early predictions for the Super Bowl, our way too early predictions. Stick with us.
McCarthy to the Giants.
God.
Stick with us, outsiders. If not for me, for Corey's sake. See you next week.